Well, it should be popular because it's a big crisis, and I think more and more governments and industry and things like insurance companies are realising it is very important in terms of what it can do to the earth. Not just the marine environment, but also one of the biggest crises is in food production. There's over 7 billion people in the world, and pretty much we won't be able to feed them. We're not doing a very good job at the moment with aridification, I guess you'd call it, of Australia and other places. The food production is just dropping, and that's a real worry. So yeah. Well, I mean, all organisms, nothing is spared. For instance, fairly recently, a European study came out to show the incredible decline in insects, including bees, which of course pollinate. And we don't often think about those little critters, we think of them as tough, and they joke about the cockroaches taking over the world. But this may not happen. I think everyone's going to suffer. Things that are very sensitive to hot or cold and have nowhere to go, they will be more at risk. At least marine organisms can move through latitude, so maybe they're at less risk. I don't know. Well, El Nino is, of course, strengthening El Nino is a consequence of climate change, or a cause of climate change, whichever way you like to look at it. And Australia is particularly vulnerable. This will drive changes in the East Australian current in our marine area, and this is already causing movement of warm water southwards, which sounds lovely, and it certainly brings in more tropical fishes, but it also reduces productivity, because the warmer surface water blocks nutrients coming from below. Now that's marine environments, and in Australia, above water, we're also seeing big effects on weather, increased droughts and aridity and lack of rainfall. Mostly the former. It's well known the atmosphere controls the ocean, but in some cases the ocean, cold ocean, coming further north than you'd expect, like the Humboldt current, that does affect the local weather. So we're most concerned about the ocean's ability to absorb CO2, I suppose you'd say. And when that's reduced, we get an increase in atmospheric CO2 as one of the potential possibilities. So it does work both ways, but certainly the atmosphere is having a big effect on the oceans. Well, in particular, these western boundary currents, like the EAC and the Gulf Stream, are changing rapidly, and they're probably where most people are focusing their efforts understanding how currents affect organisms and how that's related to climate change. So in the case of the EAC strengthening, what that means is twofold. First of all, a lot of these marine creatures that involve larvae will have the option of moving further south, and that's happening. And secondly, it will change the whole warming profile of the oceans, especially around our area. And so that's why Southeast Australia is considered a global warming hotspot, more because of the East Australian current bringing warm, less productive water, but containing tropical organisms further south. Well, I mean, ocean productivity can change dramatically year to year, season to season, independent of climate change. But one of the concerns is once we start changing currents that are delivering coral spawn, for instance, then we'll find places where corals no longer inhabit, and even if it's reversed later on, things won't change. So the ocean's fairly plastic, fairly labile, and it is a changeable medium, but it may well be that once we've disrupted populations in certain places due to these currents, we may not see a return to the way they were. And of course, the oceans change all the time, so is that important or not? I'm not sure. As far as what the oceans will look like in the future, depends where you look. I think we'll find in Southeast Australia, we'll find a very different ocean than we have today. We'll find a loss of temperate kelps and seagrasses, and the fishes, lobsters, and other things they support. A lot more urchin barrens, at least at the moment, where these tropical urchins are coming down and converting kelp beds down into Tasmania into pink rock, very thin crusts of coral and algae covering these rocks, and that'll bring in a very different flora and fauna into the area, more cryptic species perhaps than what once there, and potentially more corals as well. In other parts of the ocean, the Southern Ocean, one of the big issues is the loss of sea ice. Once that happens, that'll probably irreversibly change the Arctic and Antarctic. Sea level rise, of course, will change estuaries a lot. And so all this is going to happen over the next century, or not, I'm quite sure. Yeah, well, at the moment, not a huge proportion of the world's protein comes from the sea. It's a very important proportion. And in certain parts of the world, like the South Pacific, that Australia claims to have some custodianship over, those areas are very heavily dependent on the sea. And there we will see, I think, almost a humanitarian crisis. We're seeing it already, places like of us, not just the loss of fresh water, but loss of fishing, partly due to climate change. I think we'll see a major change in those areas. Other parts of the world that don't rely as much on the marine environment, probably a bit less, but I think our diets, we're desperate for protein. I think we'll see a loss of fishing diets. Climate change came on the horizon to many of us scientists in the late 90s, and it just so happened that we were researching fishes and corals, coral habitats on the southern reef and in other parts of the world. And I always like to long-term monitoring. We go back again and again over decades to see how change happens. That's the real change in the environments. And this happened to coincide with a ramping up of climate change and the first coral bleaching event in 1998, etc. So I suppose it has meant consolidating our research to ask questions to do with climate change. How are fishes affected by temperature? How do coral reefs change over time? How do estuaries change and how are fish adapting? So I suppose a consequence of climate change is our research has, evolved to work on climate change questions.